What's up, guys? Another Make It Make Sense Monday, another late one. All right, so I want to address um, things I've heard quite a bit over the years, but I noticed it was probably a couple months ago, people were talking about different qualities of recone kits, parts from different builders. Wanted to get into that and kind of dispel some myths. As somebody that's been in the industry for a long time, I've used almost every part available. So I've got a lot of experience with different parts and can kind of give you guys a rundown on what actually makes a difference versus what I think is going on is possibly a lot of placebo effect. So let's just get something that's real common is coils. So something customers ask me over the years is, probably the most common thing, especially in the beginning when I started, was can you take my, let's go back to the days of the ZV5 or the XV2, can you take my 1500 watt RMS sub and make it take 2500 RMS, 3000 RMS? And be honest with you guys, in the beginning, there was some Dunning-Kruger effect going on with me too. I thought I knew a lot more than I did when I first started, and I really thought changing parts out, going from 4 layer to 8 layer coils, from linear to progressive spiders. I thought I really was beefing up these subs, and it was making a huge difference. And years of building, testing, and now being able to pull parameters off all these subs to see everything for myself. I got to be honest, I was wrong on a lot of things. You can completely destroy the performance of a sub by just changing the spider pack or changing the coil. So it's not as easy as a lot of recone companies. I'm not going to mention any names. I think we've all been guilty of it over the years. Okay, I was one of them. But you'll see a lot. I've seen on like websites where you can do the stock configuration, or you have the option to do upgraded coil or upgraded spider. It says upgrade. Sometimes it doesn't say upgrade. Sometimes it's just a different coil or spider. But people think like, oh, if I take my ZV6 and I put a Nightshade red spider on it, it's going to make it handle more power, be a better sub. Well, you're probably going to hurt your performance quite a bit. In some scenarios, yes, some of you might gain from going to a stiffer spider. That really depends on your enclosure, your peak frequency, what you're trying to play, all that. But you completely change the parameters of the sub over stock. Stiffer is not always better. That's what she said. No, on subwoofers, I prefer a softer suspension for the most part. Of course, you've got your purpose-built vehicles that are more SPL geared. If you have a higher peak, yes, there can be a huge advantage to stiffening up the spider pack. Does it make it a little more durable? Yeah. Does it also increase your mechanical power handling? Huge difference between. There's a huge difference between thermal and mechanical handling. And a lot of guys don't understand that difference. They say like, well, I want to increase my power handling. It's like, well, what do you mean by that? Your thermal or your mechanical? Is your box too big and you're trying to make the spider stiffer so that you have more cone control? Okay, that's your mechanical handling. That can very easily reduce your thermal handling if you make the sub too stiff. Think about it. It doesn't move as much. Cool. But I see all these options just thrown out there like, oh, you put a stiffer spider on your sub, it'll make it better. No, it doesn't make it better. It might make it better for your application, but I'm going to guess 90% of the time it won't. And then I saw a lot of people years ago where just like throw an 8 layer coil on everything. Yeah, 8 layer coils have a big advantage in a lot of instances. You get more motor force, almost always. But it was like, some of these subs were 4 layer gaps. They were designed for 4 layer coils, and you stuff an 8 layer in there, and chances are that you're going to have coil rub, coil tick goes up exponentially. Some of you get away with it, some of you don't. I always try to tell people, if it's a 4-layer gap, like that's on you, man. It's a big risk you're taking. You're not going to have as dependable a sub. So let's just look at. All right, so I've got 2 ZV6 coils here. All right, one is the U.S. Precision Econoline coil, and one is a Chinese manufactured coil. Now, I've used both of these. I've tested both of these. Is one better than the other? Everybody loves to say U.S. is better. You know what? There's honestly very little difference between performance-wise between these coils as far as thermal handling. If we really want to get into the weeds on it, the Chinese-made coil, I would look at that coil and say that's made with a little bit higher quality than the U.S.-made coil. Going off how tight the windings are, how neat it is. To say that China can't do a good job on things when you give them the right parameters is kind of foolish. They've got more potential, and this is coming from the guy that used to manage, a friend of mine that used to manage precision Econowind. He told me straight up, he's retired now, he quit, but he said, China's coming for us. Our days are numbered, and it's only a matter of time before they completely outproduce us and make a better coil than us. So we're kind of at that point now where they're pretty neck and neck, but I'm sorry, but Precision's the last coil manufacturer in the U.S., and they just can't keep up with the demand of all. They don't do just car audio coils. They do a lot of home audio, home theater stuff. They do coils for medical devices. They're doing all kinds of different stuff. So, car audio is only a small percentage of their business. And at the rate you guys blow subs, I don't think they're that interested in keeping the car audio side of it. Like, it's not their main priority. So anyways, there's a lot more going into coils and spiders and saying, well, this one's better because it came from so-and-so, this builder. It's like, guys, they're all coming from the same place, man. You've only got a couple of actual coil manufacturers. Yes, you can have coils made to your specific specs. Typically, they're not going to be better than what you would get in a stock, for instance, Sundown sub. Do you really think you're going to get better than a stock ZV6 coil in that configuration? It's already double reinforced on the former. You're not going to be able to make that any stronger. Sundown already, we've tested these leads for well over a decade of trying different style leads. You can't get any better or more expensive than having them do the bus wire leads. All right, these are just, I'm giving you guys coil manufacturing tips here when I shouldn't, but to say like, oh well, this person's got a better made coil and they're just some random Joe that has a recone company, I'm sorry, it's just not true. If you guys are having better luck with something, it's probably just because whatever parts they use did better in your setup, or because you already recone that sub so many times, you kind of know the limits, and so you might get more longevity out of a sub you recently reconed, or you might just be babying it because you realize how expensive it is to keep reconing subs, and you don't want to have to keep going through that. But to say coil A is that much better than coil B just because of whoever built it, no, it's just, I really think it's placebo effect going on, guys. That's just my opinion as somebody that's been doing this for 15 or so years. That's just my personal opinion. I'm a nobody myself, man. I'm a layman. I'm not the smartest guy, but I have a lot of experience and I listen to the guys that are smarter than me. So I have picked up a lot of things over the years. I've learned a lot and I've tested a lot of stuff. So I know what works. I know what's BS. I try not to ever BS you guys. If somebody asks me to make their sub handle more power, I'm like, that's not really realistic. I'm like, well, do you need it to, take more power thermally or mechanically? And then that either they either learn something from that, or the conversation devolves into, well, this other builder said they could make it take double the power. I'm like, why don't you just go to them? And or they want to argue with me, well, like, my stock sub was taking double the power, so can't you make it handle more than that? It's like, well, no, your stock sub wasn't really taking double the power. You just weren't clamping across a broad range of frequencies. Guys will clamp at one frequency, their peak frequency, which is typically where power's lowest, at your peak frequency, and say, well, yeah, look at that. It was taking so much power. But you're not. Most guys aren't running meters in their vehicle so they can see real-time power, so you know what you're actually seeing real-time, because music's dynamic, right? You're not playing test tones for 5 minutes or more. So it's really hard to say, yeah, my sub was taking double the power. Maybe on a case rating of your amp, sure, your sub was taking a 5K, your 1500 watt sub was taking a 5K, but you're technically only averaging, 1500 watts to that sub across dynamic music. So that's my rant. That's my spiel on this Make Sense Monday. Yeah, this about sums it up. Is there really a major difference in different parts? Are you going to make your sub take double rated power from changing parts out? No, I don't believe so. But yeah, like and comment, guys. Tell me what you think. I love your opinions, and if you want to argue with me, you can do that too. That's cool. I don't care. I don't take it personal, man. Like I said, these are just my personal opinions from my personal experience and anecdotes. So let's hear them.